Now, do you find yourself emotionally and mentally drained after having certain conversations with people? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about it. If you're new here, my name is Shambira K. Shepherd. I talk all things self help and personal development to transform our lives to help others. Now, it took a while for me to get here. It, and I say that because it took a while for me to identify and understand my emotions. And I say that because there's been times where I've had conversations with people, and it just seems like they were dumping all of their problems on me. Or, in other words, it seemed like they were in this space of being mentally and emotionally unstable, or just had a lot going on in their life. And I was the person that was taking on or being receptive to all of their emotions and the things that they were telling me. I didn't understand what was going on at the time. I didn't know why or what was going on. I'm just thinking, like, maybe it's just because I have this caring spirit, or I have this eagerness to help people, that I tend to take on all of these things that they're talking about, or be so in tune into these conversations. But what it reminded me of is, if you've ever heard that saying, real recognize real. So I felt like in those instances, it's like almost real recognize real. And even in that particular situation, it's not like you're saying, oh, you're so real. I mean, in some cases you probably would, but a lot of times it's not what you're saying, it's how this person is reflective. So meaning, like, how they actually handle certain situations, how they talk to people, things that you actually see this person do. And so a lot of times, by their actions and by the way that they interact with other people in different circumstances, you're like, oh, okay, that person is real. You recognize it. They may recognize it in you. So I felt like it was the same concept, that real recognize real, but it was more from an energy perspective, like energy recognize energy. But it was more so on the opposite scale, like energy recognize energy, almost like opposites attract. So you would have that person that is emotionally and mentally unstable, or again, just have a lot going on, or it could just be somebody with that negative spirit that just always have something negative to say, because they have so much going on in their life, like nobody else have things going on in their life as well. And so you would notice that they would, tend to attract someone who is empathetic or is an empath. And I felt like that was, more of an energy thing, that because I am an empathetic person, that I always tend to have conversations with, or, even in some of my like relationships, that I tend to attract somebody who kind of dealt with, emotional or mental issues. And it doesn't have to be anything on like a major scale, but it's still that sense of, if that's your strength, then it's almost like you're attracting somebody where that's their weakness. And so what I would notice is, and we're thinking about, what does this look like, right? How do you identify that in a particular situation? And so, as someone who is empathetic, I would, in a lot of the situations, be in tune with that person. And so that person would be able to identify, like, okay, this person is listening to me by my cues, right? I'm like, yes, like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that. Wow. Like, so I'm that person that's going to, give you the cues. I'm going to say the different words to let you know that I'm listening to you. I also ask questions. So if you're telling me something, I might say, okay, so are you saying, A, B, and C? Sometimes I can even anticipate what they're saying before they're going to say it. And so that just shows, active listening, right? So I'm actually listening to hear you out and understand what you're saying, and not so much of me just being sympathetic to your situation. And so, like, someone who is just sympathetic to a situation, they just identify the emotion, right? They identify that something is going on in your life. So if you say, oh, I was on the way home from work and my tire went flat, and that person might say, oh my goodness, I am so sorry to hear that. And then, that's it, right? So, of course, no one wants to like just immediately change the subject. If you say, oh, my tire went flat, and they just say, oh, okay, well, how was work? Then it's almost like, what? You didn't even acknowledge, anything that I just said. And so being sympathetic is basically just acknowledging or identifying what this person is saying by just saying, hey, I feel sympathy for you, right? I feel sorry for you that this happened. And they just kind of, move on, not really trying to get too deep into it. But as someone who is empathetic, that's where we have to get deep into the situation. Right now I want to understand why this happened, or what's going on with your mental and your emotions regarding this particular situation. So we're going to use our active listening skills. We're going to ask questions. We're going to summarize what you're saying. So you saying that A, B, and C happened, and like, oh my goodness, I can't even believe that. I don't think I can go through that, and so that lets that person know that, hey, this person is listening. They really care about what I'm saying. And a lot of times it causes them to keep talking. And so I've always had that issue with, again, I think people just knew like I'm showing that concern, and I'm showing that I care. And so a lot of times they will keep talking and keep talking and keep talking. So anyway, so that's more of what an empathetic person does, or how an empathetic person is. It's just really being there, being in tune with the way somebody feels, and understanding it, even if they have never experienced the thing. It's just that person is getting to a deeper level with that conversation, or whatever it is that person is telling you. Now, on the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, okay, it's the empath, and I'm both. Okay. So, and when we say empath, right, we're talking about someone who not only understands this person's emotions or whatever it is, but they feel the emotions on a deep level. So if that person talks about, having a flat tire, they may have just been like upset or angry. And so a lot of times, if they're telling the story about what happened while they were on the way to work, or on the way home from work, and their tire went flat, a lot of times we can feel that anger. We're like, yeah, I would be so mad, like, oh my goodness. And it's almost like you can feel it. Or if that person tells you that, someone died in their family, and, maybe it's an immediate family member, like their mother, and your mother may not have passed, but at the same time, you can understand how a person would feel, if your mother passed away, right? And so you may just take on that feeling of, maybe your mother didn't pass away, but it could have been your grandmother, or a really, really close aunt who was like a mother to you. And so that even that feeling of having a family member or someone close to you pass away, that you can understand how that person feels. And so you take on these emotions very deeply. But there's ups and downs when it comes to being not only empathetic, but being an empath as well. And so it has its ups and downs, or good and bad, whatever you want to call it. And so now everybody is going to be different. Obviously, I find that most empaths are empathetic, but not all people who are empathetic are empaths. So it just all depends. And like I said, it will differ with individuals as far as how if they are both empathetic and an empath, how they handle that, what their ups and downs are. But some of the things that I've noticed, even with myself, with being an empath, one of the ups, I'd say, is having that, like I said, that caring spirit, having that eagerness to help people. That's just always been me. And I thought that, hey, this is just who I am. Never really put too much thought into it. But what I will say is I've taken I want to say it's the talents, it's your gifts and talents test. I don't know if it's for just Christians, or if anybody can take it. I did it through my church, so I never really looked into it myself. I just had a printout of it and did it on paper. But when I took this test, one of the gifts that I have, like spiritual gifts, is, giving, helping, or whatnot. And so, again, I never knew that was like a spiritual gift. I thought that was just, hey, it's just who I am. But anyway, so being an empath and also being empathetic, you can have that, giving, helping spirit, really, really having that deep sense of wanting to care for other people. As I mentioned before as well, being a good listener. So I've noticed that, I am a good listener, and a part of that is that's the reason why I'm in tune into the conversation. And, I'm just like, letting people know that, hey, I'm listening to what you're saying, giving you these cues. I'm able to repeat things that you say. I'm able to finish your sentences and all of those things because I'm a good listener. Also, providing that emotional support. So obviously, if that person is expressing themselves to you and whatnot, you are able to respond in certain ways and provide that emotional support to individuals, which I think that is really great. It's good for them, but it can be a bad thing for empaths. Another thing I would say is having an high EQ. I feel like, someone who is an empath is, really emotionally intelligent in so many different areas. And so, and as I mentioned, being, it doesn't just stop with me feeling sorry for you, which is what sympathy is, but also, me getting deeper into your situation. And so me asking these questions and being able to finish your sentences or point out things, knowing, maybe things that you are wanting to say, you may not have said it, but given the context, I'm able to make out what you're trying to say. And all of that, I feel like is someone who is emotionally intelligent and, can understand not only their emotions, but understand other people's emotions as well. So anyway, it's, could be so many other things as far as ups, but those are some of the main things that I've noticed, at least with myself. Now, some of the downfalls to being an empath and also being empathetic, as I mentioned earlier, it drains you. Definitely burnout and overwhelm. Okay. I found myself so many times. I remember meeting this guy, and we had a very short conversation when I first met him, and I was trying to figure out if I was going to give him my number or not, so I was trying to have like this little mini conversation, but I was like on the move. I'm going from one place to the next, so I'll try to cut the conversation short, like, here, take my number, just call me. So when I finally got on the phone with the guy and I was talking to him, I kind of identified what I saw when I met him in person, but like I said, I couldn't really pinpoint it. But I was on the phone with this man for almost 5 hours, and you will probably want to know why I was on the phone with him for 5 hours, given his situation. I'm not going to get into everything, but I knew from early on in the call that he was not for me. But I stayed on the phone with him for almost 5 hours, and he had a very negative mindset. And I think a lot of this was me trying to provide this support to him emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Okay. Trying to, just kind of combat a lot of this negative self talk, just all of these things that he was saying. And it was emotionally draining. And I think that at that point, I realized that I hadn't set a boundary in regards to this, because now that I have identified, what my emotions, right, and I know what's going on, and I can, put a name to it or whatever. I hadn't set a boundary though, and so I remember at least a few times during this call, me trying to like hang up, like, okay, I'll just, if you need somebody to talk to, whatnot, just call me, or hit me up, and whatever. And then he might say something else, and then now we're on the phone for another 30 to 45 minutes. And so I remember getting off of that call, and I literally had to sit there for about 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm talking about, I was breathing hard, like, well, I wasn't really breathing hard, but like taking deep breaths, just trying to decompress, because I felt like I had been drained of my energy in that call. And I'm just like, I could never do that again. I'm like, I felt like I was it was taking so much out of me trying to uplift or build this person up. And I'm like, I could never. Like, I already knew that I would never, this would not work as far as like relationship or me trying to talk to somebody like that. That was a no go for me. But that's what tends to happen with empaths and people who are empathetic is you get burnt out, you get overwhelmed. It's just so many different emotions that can, come over you when you're trying to give so much to other people, and it's draining, and they're not filling you back up. There's not a 50-50 thing where you fill them up, or I'll say 100-100, because I shouldn't be half full trying to give you anything anyways. So even if I'm at 100 and you at 100, even if I give you something and I drop down to 90, you should be able to give it back to me to put me back at 100, right? So it should be like a back and forth thing where we should both be full, but not that I'm constantly being drained and my energy level is going from 100, 90, 80, 70, just going down, down, down. And even if I'm pouring into yours, maybe going up, but at a very slow rate. So you may be at like a 40 and go to 42, then a 44, because it's like, you still, the negative mindset is still there and it's taking so much. So anyway, so burnout, overwhelm, all of the good things I've noticed have been definitely a downside to me. Another thing is I'm not going to really say this is really a bad thing, but I try to avoid conflict. And more conflict, more so like high level. Like, I don't like arguing. I don't like getting into altercations with people. It drains me so bad. It puts me in a very, very bad space. I get very fidgety. I'm not a real emotional person, but I will notice that my energy level drops quickly and very low, and I was shut down. Like, if I get to that point where I feel like I'm done here, like, I've given so much in this conversation or this disagreement or whatever we have going on, and I feel like this is not going anywhere and my energy level is depleted, I was shut down. And that's it. I'm not talking about anything else. And so we could be like a mid conversation or argument or whatever you want to call it, and I would shut it down quick because I don't have anything else to give. But not only would I shut down, but it also puts me in a bad space. And a lot of times I can't think straight, and I'm just fidgety. I'm all over the place, and I don't like conflict at all. And so even in that particular space, as far as avoiding conflict, it's even more so when it comes to, just like I said, regular conversations, depending on where that's going. Because even in that, if I start to see like, okay, voice is elevating, and we're tending to say certain things that we should be saying. I don't like people calling me out my name. Like, different things can put me in a bad space. And so altogether, avoiding conflict, like I said, that could be a good, bad thing or whatever. Another thing is me not being very intimate. I didn't really know if this was due to the whole being an empath and being empathetic, but I can totally understand why that is because I feel like me putting so much effort and time into somebody and really getting close to them, it that can drain your energy in a way. And so I didn't really think about it from that perspective. I'm just thinking like, oh, I'm just not like that lovey-dovey type of person. And, I don't really care to like, do all that cuddling and all that crazy stuff or whatever, which I mean, I will from time to time and all that other stuff, but, that's no here or there. But at the same time, I feel like it's a lot of times if it's something that's taking my energy, or it is taking out of anything that's taking from me, I feel like it depletes my energy altogether. And so that part, it has been a real struggle. But me identifying and understanding and knowing that, now I know how to handle situations like that, and not so much of me not being intimate at all. And I'm talking about just, again, regular intimacy, just being able to touch somebody and hold them, hug them, do whatever, sit close to them, cuddle with them, all of those things. in certain conversations that you can have can be intimate. And so me understanding and knowing it and acknowledging it, now I know how to balance it and knowing, the do's and the don'ts. Now there's certain things I would say that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It all depends on how you look at it. But a person who is an empath and who is empathetic is really in tune with their intuition. So they're the type of people that can, almost what you would say, see through somebody's soul. They're able to, be able to identify certain things without this person actually saying it. It's almost like they know it. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that that's been my intuition has been heightened in certain situations. I don't think that it may not be as high as others, but I do find that sometimes, if people are talking about certain things and they may even deny it, and I may say, I don't know, I'm getting this feeling about this thing. And even the guy that I was telling you about, there was something that I was feeling about him that I wasn't sure. But after I was having this conversation with him, he pretty much confirmed it, that something wasn't right. He had something going on in his life that he wasn't telling me, but based off of context, I was picking up on something. And then again, after having that conversation with him, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So that's what it is. And I think a part of that, having that prolonged conversation with him, was trying to identify or pinpoint this feeling. And I'm like, so I asked a lot of questions and was just trying to understand his story, because I was just getting that feeling like something is off. It is not right here. And I don't think he's telling me everything. And so, of course, after having that conversation with him, he identified exactly what it was that I was feeling. And so intuition is definitely a thing when it comes to empaths or people who are empathetic. Also, solitude. I love being alone. And again, this could be a good thing or a bad thing for some people, but this also kind of ties into me being an introvert. I do not like being around a whole lot of people. And when I do, which I don't mind, but when I do for a short period of time, and then I got to go back into my little shell. So for some people, they're like extroverts. They get their energy from being around other people. I get my energy from being alone. So I love solitude. I love being by myself. And even in that space of me being by myself, there's things that I've been able to do to help me with, being able to identify and know how to operate this space that I'm in. And that could be journaling, it could be, deep breathing or meditation. So there's so many things that happens during that period of solitude for me. Sometimes it's just deep thinking. I'm just sitting down. I'm just doing a lot of thinking. I could be reading. There's so many different things, but solitude or being alone, it doesn't equate to lonely, but just being alone and by myself away from a lot of people, that's how I rejuvenate and recoup. And another thing is nature, just being around nature. I found this to be a thing as I got older. Just And I'll find that sometimes in the morning when it's really, really cool, like when the sun is just coming up and you hearing the birds chirping and you can just smell the crisp air. Like I love just that early morning smell. I love just like going to the beach and hearing the water and smelling the air. And again, you just, looking at the beautiful sky. Like oh my goodness, I just love it. I love it. So I think that really, really helps me. This can kind of tie into, kind of self-care and mindfulness, loving nature and all of those things. And I think that just kind of helps me when it comes to knowing how to operate in this space of being an empath and being empathetic. So I think that, all of those things, just understanding the ups and the downs and some of the things that, entails you or how you operate and who you are. You have to, acknowledge and identify those things and then understand the things so that you know what to do or what not to do and how that's going to help you. Now, what I will say to, wrap this up here, is that I've noticed that being an empath and being empathetic, that I've attracted what I would consider narcissistic individuals. And so maybe, and I've tried to skate around it and say, mentally or emotionally unstable individuals, that those individuals doesn't necessarily have to be narcissistic, but I've noticed that those individuals who, may be dealing with some emotional or mental issues, have some narcissistic characteristics. And so a lot of times being, empathetic or being an empath, you will attract individuals like that. And so again, you understanding who you are and what you bring to the table, and then knowing when you're dealing with people that it's a certain way that you have to operate, and asking questions, a lot of questions, really getting to understand a person's mental and their mindset and how they deal with certain situations will really help you to avoid getting yourself deeply involved with individuals like that, where they would drain you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually a lot of times. And if you ain't careful, they might drain you financially. So definitely be careful and be vigilant to those particular situations. But one thing I will say is, on a flip side, or the better side, is that I found that being an empath or being empathetic, I am attracted to intellect, or a sapiosexual. So I am big on I call them head conversations, right? Because we can talk about so many different things, and get into all the things that don't really matter per se, but having somebody who knows how to have good conversation, they're very intelligent, again, and just being able to connect with somebody more on a mental level is very attracting to me. So I noticed that, I tend to, my energy level tends to go up, or I tend to, be in my happy places, I would say, when I'm dealing with a sapiosexual or individual who is, intelligent or attracted to intelligence or intellect. So you definitely want to make sure, as an empathetic person, or a person who is an empath, avoiding narcissistic individuals, but maybe tapping into that person who's a sapiosexual may be better for you. Now, if you've gotten any good stuff out of this video, make sure that you comment in the section, like, are you empathetic? Are you an empath? Are you both? Maybe even comment your experience being an empathetic or empath person, and how has that treated you in all of these years. So make sure you subscribe, share this video with any of your family, friends, to see what they think as well about being an empathetic or empath person. And I'll see you in the next video.